Hello and welcome to News by Different Standards. The General Secretary of the Confederation of African Football, CAF, has resigned amid a chaotic time for football on the continent. Veron Masengo Amba said in a statement he was retiring, but his departure comes during the fallout over decisions to strip Senegal of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations, the AFCON title, and postpone the women's tournament at the last minute. These incidents have left CAF, the governing body for African football, battling a crisis of confidence. Masengo Amba alluded to controversies faced during his tenure in his statement on Sunday. Now that I've been able to dispel suspicions that some people have gone to great lengths to cast on me, I can retire with peace of mind and without constraint, leaving the CAF more prosperous than ever. Masengo Amba, deputy to CAF President Patrice Motsepe, wrote. The 66-year-old has been criticised for staying on as General Secretary past the organisation's mandatory retirement age of 63. He has also been accused by some employees of creating a toxic atmosphere in the workplace, although an investigation after staff complaints cleared him of any wrongdoing. Masengo Amba, who hails from the Democratic Republic of Congo but also holds Swiss nationality, was appointed General Secretary in March 2021. According to the news agency Reuters, CAF's competitions director Samson Adumu will take over as acting General Secretary. The governing body is awaiting a decision by the Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS, on Senegal's appeal against being stripped of the AFCON title. Senegal is challenging CAF's appeals body for overturning their 1-0 win over host Morocco in the AFCON final last month. During the game, Senegal's players left the field in protest when, with the score at 0-0, host Morocco were awarded a stoppage time penalty. When they returned after a delay of about 17 minutes, Morocco subsequently failed to score the spot kick, and Senegal netted an extra time winner. Following an appeal by the Moroccan FA, the FRMF, CAF later ruled that Senegal had forfeited the match, and Morocco were awarded a 3-0 victory. So the idea of this is that the General Secretary for this particular association, which is representative of African football, has decided this is his time to retire. I don't necessarily blame him for that, given the controversies that are currently going on with the field of sport. I'm not familiar with African football, so I can't comment too much of that. I just heard a little bit of news to do with that whole issue with the players walking off from the Senegalese team, and because of that, the Moroccan team default won because of the unforced, removal of the other side. It also is past his retirement side, where I think if the whole thing is it's mandatory at 63 you have to retire, this should have been forced on him maybe 3 years ago, or for a discussion to be held where there could be some sort of succession plan to find someone who might be better in place, or someone who's worked for the association for a number of years, and then have them trained to that position. I'd love to know what you think of this football controversy. Do you think actually he's leaving at the right time, or do you think this has been too late into the day and actually this should have been maybe done in 2023? It is a story that is crippling in Germany and has led to one of its best-known TV stars tearfully telling thousands of protesters from a stage in Hamburg how she had to wear a bulletproof vest due to death threats. A week ago, Colleen Fernandez, aged 44, accused her ex-husband of spreading pornographic deepfakes of her online in bombshell allegations published by German news magazine Der Spiegel. Her claims have triggered demonstrations, promises to tighten law, and criticism that Chancellor Friedrich Merz has bungled his response. Fernandez's ex-husband Christian Ullmann denies the allegation and has not been charged. He is also taking legal action against the magazine that broke the story. His high-profile media lawyers Christian Schertz and Simon Bowen have said that Ullmann has never produced and/or distributed deepfake videos of Ms. Fernandez or any other individuals. Any such claims are false. They argue that what happened between Fernandez and Ullmann is completely unrelated to the German debate surrounding legal loopholes in criminal law over deepfake pornography. Ullmann and Fernandez were for years known as a prominent celebrity couple, chalking up extensive TV, presenting, production, writing and acting roles between them. The pair's status as public figures partly explains why the case has captivated Germany, but regardless of the outcome of this case, It has also exposed anger about what campaigners say are glaring gaps in criminal law. A group of 250 women from politics, business and culture and have released 10 demands, including the clear criminalisation of producing and distributing non-consensual sexualised deepfakes. The group includes Labour Minister Barbel Bass from the centre-left SPD party, rapper Ikamil and climate activist Louisa Nerber. Federal Justice Minister Stephanie Hubig has announced plans to change the law so that the creation and distribution of pornographic deepfakes would become an explicit offence. The crime would be punishable by up to 2 years in prison, according to draft plans seen by German media. Currently, under German law, only the dissemination of such pictures is potentially punishable if it is found to have breached someone's right to their own image. Fernandez told thousands of protesters gathered in her native Hamburg on Thursday of the abuse she had experienced since going public with her allegations. "I'm standing here with a bulletproof vest under police protection because men want to kill me." She has claimed that her ex-husband confessed to her on Christmas Day 2024 that she had been spreading fake sexualized images of her online. "It was like receiving news of her death," she told Der Spiegel. "I couldn't speak, I couldn't cry." That has been countered by Ullmann's lawyer, Schertz, who was saying the key points that have been reported about Ullmann are demonstrably incomplete and incorrect and subject to legal proceedings. Fernandez has filed a legal complaint in Spain, where the couple previously lived together, making allegations of threats and abuse. However, Ullmann's lawyers have rejected her characterization of the situation and say no unilateral attribution of blame has been made towards their client. The TV presenter told German public broadcaster ARD that she chose to make a complaint in Spain as it has stronger gender-based violence laws than Germany, a country she describes as a paradise for perpetrators. There is no dispute that Fernandez has been a victim of AI-generated porn. The material is out there on the internet, and her broader claims about being the victim of online abuse are not new. She has previously spoken about this in a 2024 ZDF documentary entitled Deep Fake Porn, Digital Abuse. In November 2024, Fernandez lodged a criminal complaint in Germany against persons unknown a month before she alleges that woman confessed. It has now emerged that an investigation in Germany has been reopened in the wake of the Spiegel report. The public prosecutor office in Itzehoe, a small town near Hamburg, told the BBC that the prior investigation was discontinued last June as there were no leads about who may have allegedly created fake accounts in Fernandez's name. It should be noted that the presumption of innocence applies in favour of the accused, the prosecutor's office added. The story is also putting political pressure on Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who has long been accused of being out of touch when it comes to younger female voters, sometimes referred to by critics as his woman problem. When asked about violence against women in Parliament on Wednesday, Merz said that there had been an explosion of violence in the physical and digital spheres, with a considerable proportion originating from immigrant groups. The Chancellor's remarks did prompt some applause in the Bundestag among his own MPs in the conservative CDU party as well as from lawmakers in the far-right AfD. However, others say his remarks were misjudged, including Lara Bunga of the Left Party, who told German TV, whoever points as a reflex to immigration in violence against women downplays structural violence instead of fighting it. Government figures show that non-Germans are overrepresented as suspects in family and domestic violence cases, although exact nationalities are not specified. Non-German suspects in this case are people who have either foreign nationality, are stateless, or their nationality is unclear. Anyone who has both German and another nationality is considered German in these statistics, while a general migration background is not recorded. Meanwhile, the number of female victims of violence and other crimes, in person and online, has risen to an all-time high in Germany, according to police crime statistics for 2024. So in this case, we have a story of a woman who believes it is the former husband and who is responsible for sharing these types of deep fake pictures and images, which she finds egregious and she has given no express permissions for. It is worth noting that even though it could be the case that this happens and he still processes his innocence and is legally fighting this in court, and so there can't be too much comment about that, that it is a case that people can just take images of her because of who she is. She's famous, so that's another thing. And actually just use standard lazy AI generated content to basically do that for them without much effort. And because of that, it just means, anyone can do it. It's fine, unfortunately, in this world we are, and even the legislation around it is just extremely slow. Because of this, I don't think much is really going to happen. I don't think he's going to get found guilty, as sad as that sounds. And even if he does, to what extent and to what means is he going to be found guilty? Because how do you disseminate who created those images? He could have made some of them. He definitely wouldn't have made all of them, because they would have been, some people have a weird fascination with people, and that can go to all different manners and realms of the internet, which is just quite disturbing to say, to be honest. Former Abercrombie & Fitch CEO Mike Jeffries was recorded telling his British partner, "We're screwed and in big trouble," if he was found fit to stand trial on sex trafficking charges later this year, a New York federal court has heard. The audio was part of more than 100 phone calls between the ex-fashion boss and Matthew Smith, referred to during a 4-day mental competency hearing this week on Long Island. Jeffries' lawyers argue that he is suffering with dementia and late onset of Alzheimer's disease and is unfit to face trial alongside his partner and their alleged middleman in October. However, prosecutors say their medical experts found his condition has improved and that the calls reveal he is incredibly focused on being found incompetent. In further recordings, Jeffries says he's hoping for a good outcome, describing being found fit as a disaster, and tells a doctor, "You better find me incompetent." Central Islip Court heard. The calls were recorded last year while he was being treated for 4 months in a mental health unit at a federal prison in North Carolina to see if he could regain competency. The 81-year-old had previously been found mentally incompetent last May, but prison officials then declared in December that he was fit for trial following his hospital stay. Prosecutors told the court Jeffries frequently complained about prison conditions and was caught on tape describing to Smith how horrible the jail was, adding, "That's why we got to pull this off." Jeffries, his partner Smith, age 62, and their alleged middleman James Jacobson, age 73, were charged with running a global sex trafficking and prostitution business in October 2024. They have pleaded not guilty to the charges, which carry a maximum sentence of life in prison. Their arrests follow an October 2023 investigation, an ongoing series that revealed the trio had been at the centre of a sophisticated operation scouting young men for sex around the world while Jeffries was CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch. Judge Nusrat J. Chowdhury will decide in May whether Jeffries will stand trial after considering the testimony of 6 experts, forensic psychologists, psychiatrists and neurologists, including prison doctors, who were cross-examined in court this week. 3 defense experts, Dr. Jacqueline C. Valdez, Dr. Alexander Bardi, and Dr. Miranda Rosenberg, maintain that Jeffries is mentally incompetent due to the residual effects of traumatic brain injury, probably Lewy body dementia and Alzheimer's disease. They testified that Jeffries demonstrated disinhibited and socially inappropriate behaviour, which is part of a range of dementia symptoms, the court heard. Examples include Jeffries calling the prosecutor's professional psychologist a cunning bleep and complimenting her hair, telling Bardi his clothing was poorly tailored, and describing his partner Smith as a dwarf, they say. He was also recorded in excruciating detail on about 20 prison calls, discussing his international travel plans for the next few months, despite having been on house arrest since 2024. "I don't want to go on trips without you," Jeffries was heard telling Smith from prison in the context of their looming trial, which prosecutors argue shows his awareness that he would regain his freedom if he was ruled incompetent and the charges were dropped. Rosenberg and Bardi, the defense experts' witnesses, disagree, saying it instead highlights that Jeffries does not remember his legal restrictions and the seriousness of the situation. There wasn't the appropriate emotional response that I would expect someone to have who is facing such grave charges, who might end up, if found guilty, dying in prison, says Bardi, a forensic psychiatrist who reviewed Jeffries over 4 days in 2024 and 2026. Instead, his manner throughout the evaluation, back then, as well as earlier in the year, was almost like we were having lunch at his country club. There was no sense of alarm or distress. Valdez told the court there is evidence that Jeffries' mental decline began in 2013 when MRI and CT scans showed mild atrophy or shrinking of the brain, which was exacerbated by a fall in Cape Town, South Africa in 2018. Jeffries had been drinking alcohol at the time of the 2018 incident, and his medical records showed that he continued to drink after being hospitalized, but Bardi told the judge he did not think his general alcohol consumption had a significant effect on his condition. Following the fall, Jeffries became psychotic, and his partner Smith reported to Valdez, who first assessed Jeffries in October 2023, that he began hallucinating and was found in his underwear, unable to move in his neighbour's garden in 2019. Dr. Tracy O'Connor Pinuto and Dr. Cassandra Morris from the Federal Medical Center in Butler testified that Jeffries was competent after assessing him over 4 months in prison. They say his cognitive abilities were not consistent with Alzheimer's disease, which the court heard could not be conclusively diagnosed until an autopsy could be performed after his death. Even given the declines that Mr. Jeffries has suffered in his cognitive functioning, he still is brighter and more capable cognitively than probably 95% of the patients that we assess for competency, says Pinuto, the only neuropsychologist at the federal prison. Jeffries, wearing a suit and tie in the courtroom, waved to Pinuto and laughed as she was sworn in. The multimillionaire was jovial and fairly charismatic during their interactions in prison, she says, and was purposely testing the limits, sometimes calling her a girl. He at one point was laughing and joking about how much fun he was having with the testing and said, "We can be married. I'm gay, but that doesn't matter," she told the court. They diagnosed Jeffries with more neurocognitive deficits, and she says his testing scores may have improved since 2023 from borderline or impaired to average because of abstinence from alcohol and better medication management during his stay, the court heard. Morris, a forensic psychologist, says Jeffries was very interested in increasing his prison privileges and was moved from a semi-secure unit to general population with a cell door unlocked most of the day, showing he did not need round-the-clock care, as the defence argue. Mr. Jeffries laughed when I asked him if he was able to drive, and he said, "I haven't driven in 20 years, she recalled during one interaction. He has someone to drive for him, and he has somebody to manage his finances. So it was clear that he wasn't doing these things, but not because he wasn't able, it was because he had made other arrangements." In July 2025, the month Jeffries was admitted to the prison hospital, she says he told her he was there to prove he was incompetent. When she asked if that was what he was hoping for, the court heard he responded, "Yes, sounds terrible, but it's the right thing to do." Central to determining competency is whether Jeffries understands the charges against him, their consequences, the legal proceedings, and can assist with his own defence. The defence's medical experts argue he cannot and is unable to name his charges, and has significant gaps in his biographical narrative, such as the dates of his education. Jeffries described being found guilty as a money grab and not that he could end up in prison. Bardi told the court, suggesting he did not understand the criminal process. "If the judge knew who I was, she would know that there's no way I could be found guilty," he recalled him saying. But prosecutors told the judge that both could be true. Jeffries has already had $11 million in cash seized by the US government, and if found guilty, may be ordered to compensate victims. Valdez testified that Jeffries showed some difficulties with his processing speed, attention, and problem solving. His ability to list as many fruits and vegetables in a minute was in the bottom 3% of his peers, she says, and his recall of a list of 16 words was at the bottom 1% for his age. Neither defence's witnesses nor the prison's doctors believed Jeffries was malingering or intentionally fabricating or exaggerating his symptoms. However, prosecutors argue that his 109 prison phone calls to Smith last year, comprising over 22 hours of audio, along with his recorded evaluation with the defense experts from January this year, tells a different story. Jeffries is heard discussing possible defense strategies, such as discrediting witnesses and saying these people were adults, like there was no force involved, they told the judge. In other recordings played in court, Jeffries praises a fascinating book he read on the history of Condé Nast and discusses the passionate TV series Heated Rivalry about two queer hockey players, though he misremembers the title as Fierce Rivalry and cites an editorial he read suggesting how the show represents a change in the gay world. Prosecutors say this is evidence that Jeffries can understand, retain information, and read something his partner Smith had told the defence experts he was unable to do. Jeffries is also heard lamenting about his 22-year career at Abercrombie & Fitch, and tearfully reminiscing about store openings, including driving down Fifth Avenue as the retailer's flagship shop was opened in New York City in 2005. Build a story about that around that he is heard telling the defence's experts of his success in business during their 2026 evaluation. In court, US Prosecutor Erin Reed questioned how Jeffries could remember important moments from his career, but forgotten the 50 to 60 wild orgies he had attended around the world during the same years. Jury selection is currently scheduled for the 26th of October, and a trial is expected to continue with Smith and their alleged middleman, Jacobson, even if Jeffries is ruled incompetent. Last year, a court ruled that Abercrombie & Fitch must pay for Jeffries' criminal defence bill, a figure lawyers say is likely to run into millions as a result of an indemnification agreement he signed while stepping down as chief executive in 2014. So this is another case of one of those people who seems to be very much in a very powerful place, who has been allowed to kind of get away with things. This has meant that it has been very difficult to get him in, even though he's in prison, it's difficult to actually get him through the court system. If it is deemed that he's incompetent or mentally unable to stand trial, then he may be let off with a lesser sentence in terms of it may be more on a house arrest terms, and that he can only move out of the house between certain times. However, if he is deemed competent, then he has a maximum sentence of life imprisonment, which won't be contested if that's to be the case. Well, he can contest it, but that might not actually make any difference to him. One of Scotland's most high-profile gangland figures has been paraded by police in Bali after being arrested at an airport immigration checkpoint. Stephen Lyons was taken into custody on Saturday shortly after he arrived at I Agusti Negara Rai International Airport on a flight from Singapore. Neguri Rai Immigration Office confirmed the 45-year-old, whom it referred to only by his initials SL, was arrested following an Interpol alert. The request for Lyons' arrest is believed to have come via Spain's Guardia Civil. They understand he is now expected to be extradited to Spain. Stephen Lyons is the head of the Lyons clan, which was originally based in Cumbernauld, North Lanarkshire. It has been involved in a feud with the rival Glasgow-based Daniel Group for more than 20 years. It was reported earlier this month that Lyons had been arrested in Bahrain 5 months after being released from custody in Dubai, but in the weeks that followed, details of his whereabouts were shrouded in mystery, until he stepped off a flight in Bali. In a statement, the Neguri Rai Immigration Office said, based on intelligence data, SL is strongly suspected of being the leader of an international criminal organisation. He is suspected of being the mastermind behind the operation of several fictitious companies and of being involved in money laundering. Budi Kanaiwan, head of the office, said the arrest served as a message that the Indonesian island will never be a safe haven for international fugitives. And Felucia Sengguki Ratna, head of the regional office of the Directorate General of Immigration, Bali, said this achievement demonstrates that immigration surveillance in Bali is effective, integrated, and responsive to transnational threats. After being stopped in the international arrivals area, Lyons, who was wearing a t-shirt, shorts, and carrying a rucksack, was handed over to Agusti Negara Rai Airport Area Resort Police. He is currently being held at the airport's detention centre. On Saturday, a police Scotland spokesperson said, "We are aware of the arrest of a Scottish nominal in Bali, who we are working closely with the European partners. It is understood that the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office has not been approached by Lyons or anyone connected to him." In 2006, Stephen Lyons survived a shooting at a garage in Lamhill, in the north of Glasgow, which claimed the life of his cousin, Michael Lyons. He later moved to Spain before settling in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Lyons' criminal alliances include ties to the Dubai-based Kinahan crime group. He is understood to have forged a relationship with the founder Christie's son, former boxing promoter Daniel Kinahan, while living in the Costa del Sol. Stephen Dempster, producer of Kinahan, The True Story of Ireland's Mafia, has previously said that by the mid-2010s, The Elon's group had become bigger and wealthier by tapping into the cartel's global network. Last May, Stephen Leon's brother Eddie Leons Jr. and Ross Monahan were shot dead in a beachfront bar in Fuengirola on the Costa del Sol. Both men had spent the evening watching the Champions League final before they were targeted by a lone gunman. Michael Riley, 44, from Liverpool, had been accused by Spanish police of the murders. He had challenged an extradition bid, but the Crown Prosecution Service confirmed in October they had given his consent to be taken to Spain to face prosecution. In the days after the double shooting, a Spanish National Police detective said the suspect was a member of the rival Daniel gang. But Police Scotland had maintained there is nothing to suggest the murders in Spain are linked to the ongoing gang war or that it was planned in Scotland. On Friday, the joint Scottish-Spanish operation targeted properties in Belshire, Glasgow, Gardcosh, Whitburn, Caldercrews, Cabernauld, Coatbridge, Barcelona, and in the Malaga area. Officers made 8 arrests in Scotland and 5 in Spain. Detective Chief Inspector George Calder said, "The investigation was probing alleged high-level involvement in organised crime, drugs and money laundering." He added that stay of action has been the result of over 2 years of investigative work that's been diligently carried out by officers not only here but by other agencies, including the National Crime Agency and the Guardia Civil. Police Scotland said the inquiry predated last year's gangland feud in central Scotland, which resulted in a series of assaults, shootings and firebombings. A number of properties were set alight in Edinburgh and the surrounding areas in March before the attacks spread to the west at the beginning of April. The force launched Operation Portaledge in response, and it has so far resulted in more than 60 arrests. On Friday, Scottish and Spanish officers were supported by colleagues from Europol and officers in the Netherlands, Turkey and the United Arab Emirates. Officers in Turkey seized 2 plots of land and a villa estimated to be worth around €600,000 or £520,000, as well as shares in a company. Europol said statements had also been taken from 4 Turkish citizens as witnesses. So, from my point of view, this is actually a really good thing. It's a good bit of news, given that we're now in a situation where potentially the boss of one of these major international crime groups has now been managed and has been arrested. But the downside of that is it's that whole, you axe the head of the Hydra, then something else will just sprout up. So they'll have a succession plan. Someone else will be in charge now, and this might just mean it's just another point of blame. You arrest one person, there's another member of family who can actually just claim the title. A 26-year-old man has been shot dead while sitting in a car near London's Euston Station. Police said CCTV showed he was shot at several times by a suspect who arrived and left on a bike on Saturday night. The man died at the scene in Charlton Street in North London, despite the efforts of paramedics to save his life. Detectives have begun a murder investigation and no arrests have been made so far. The victim was attacked while sitting in a white Nissan Juke, and police were called to the scene at about 10:30 p.m. The man's next of kin have been informed. This is very scary, given that this is a central London style of environment. It's very busy, Euston Station. Even at that time, you will still have people around. So for someone to just almost do like a drive-by shooting is of great concern. I would warn for people just be wary of the circumstances around this. Shops, restaurants and cafes in Egypt have been told to close early as part of a raft of temporary measures to combat soaring energy prices caused by the Iran war. Retail and dining premises will have to close by 9 p.m. or 7 p.m. GMT each night for the next month, beginning on Saturday. The exceptional measures introduced by the Egyptian government also include dimming streetlights and roadside advertising, as well as a return to home working for 1 day a week in April for many. Egypt has been particularly affected by the Middle East conflict and the effective blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, a key shipping route for oil and liquefied natural gas. Global oil prices have skyrocketed since supply via the waterway came to a near total halt, with fears there could be a knock-on effect on the price of food, medicine and other foods if left unresolved. Even though Egypt has no involvement in the war, its reliance on imported fuel has made it vulnerable to supply shocks. Egypt's Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouly said on Saturday that its petrol bill alone had more than doubled from January to $2.5 billion US or £1.9 billion in March. Hotels and tourist attractions will be exempt from the energy-saving measures the government has said. Tourism is estimated to make up around a tenth of Egypt's economy. However, several hotels in Cairo, including the Marriott and Cosmopolitan, told broadcaster RFI that they had acquired generators in case of power cuts and would keep their restaurants open for guests irrespective of closing times elsewhere. While most employees will be told to work from home 1 day a week, essential workers such as those in hospitals, schools and factories will be excluded. Since Iran began threatening to strike ships transporting goods throughout the Strait of Hormuz, most international shipping through the narrow choke point has ceased. Usually around 20% of the world's oil and gas supply flows through it. US President Donald Trump has repeatedly vented his frustration that allied nations were unwilling to help escort ships throughout the waterway. Some ships have passed through the strait since the war began, though several of these had links to Iran, China or India. Thailand said on Saturday that it had reached an agreement with Iran, giving its oil tankers safe passage. The Egyptian government has already raised petrol prices and the cost of taking public transport to limit the impact of the conflict on its public finances. It also slowed down large energy-intensive state projects and cut government vehicle fuel allowances by nearly a third, news agency Reuters reports. Meanwhile, the Ethiopian government on Saturday told state-owned companies and public institutions to face non-essential staff on leave to conserve fuel use for transport. This is very much the story that's happening in a load of different countries. I believe in the country of Sri Lanka, they are actually having their Wednesdays off. So it's going to be moved to a 4-day week rather than a 5-day week. I think this is mostly for public offices, so government-based departments, but it could be extended to private companies as well as an enforcement measure to conserve fuel. This is the same that's happening obviously in Egypt. That's a situation. They're outside of key workers, so that's quite similar to how the pandemic was. I know in the UK, in our specific area, what's happening is the government here has restricted it so that at any one time you can only purchase £30 worth of fuel. But the problem with that is if people are then trying to go to other petrol garages, that could still be a bit of a problem. I think there are workarounds that they're not managing correctly. And at the time of recording right now, which is the 29th of March, it is the situation that about 600 petrol garages have reported that they are completely out of fuel. So that's just going to urge people to panic buy. The last time we had a panic buy was probably around the pandemic, where fuel shortages happened because no one knew how to operate in those circumstances when we had kind of distance working and people couldn't access things, so people started overstocking. Then people started storing products, or excess oil in jerry cans. Those cans weren't properly contained and kept protected from the atmosphere, and so a number of them actually reacted and ended up having mini explosions. That meant that some people unfortunately lost their lives because either they were too close in proximity, or that ended up creating fires which eventually ended up leading to their suffocation. I'm hoping people are actually going to start behaving a little bit more rationally, especially in the UK, because this is where I am, this is where I'm most affected, and I hope the same applies to the countries that you're watching this video from. I'd love to know your opinions about the situation, any specific circumstances that your country is taking in terms of either fuel rationing or trying to minimise the companies that are operating using these types of, technologies, or how they're operating their work from home policies. A couple who were tricked into paying £2,500 for fake flights have had their money reimbursed by their bank following an appeal to the financial watchdog. Dinesh, aged 80, and Shashikala Jansari, aged 78, from Leicester, were unaware they had booked their 2-month trip to India with fraudsters and only found out at the airport check-in in November. The pair reported the scam to Santander, but were told it was unable to refund the money, which led them to make an appeal to the Financial Ombudsman Service. The bank has now said, after a review of Mr. and Mrs. Jansari's case, the money had been reimbursed, adding it had the utmost sympathy for those who are targeted by criminals. The Jansaris have enjoyed travelling over the years and had previously booked their trips abroad through a travel agent. However, on this occasion, Dinesh decided to shop around online for a cheaper deal for their trip they had planned for 8 years to visit relatives in Gujarat. He believed he was dealing with the travel website Expedia, but he had ended up on a fake page that then moved his inquiry onto a WhatsApp conversation with an account called Fly Expedia. The scammer asked for a direct bank transfer of £2,502, which the couple paid. The couple had no idea they had been tricked until they arrived at the airline check-in desk at London's Heathrow Airport and were told they had fake tickets. Shashikala said, "We were shocked when we found out they were scam tickets. We were at the airport ready to go. I just started panicking and my husband was very stressed." The couple made the journey back to Leicester after declining to buy tickets for the same flight at a cost of £5,000 each. The scam was reported to report fraud and Santander, but they were told it was unlikely their money would be recovered. Shashikala said the bank said it was our fault because we transferred the money. Their son, Ashit Jansari, said he appealed to the financial watchdog, which prompted the bank to revisit the payment, and as a result, it had reimbursed the full amount. It was the financial ombudsman that dealt with the matter. It contacted the bank, Ashit said. Within a week, I got a call from the branch manager to say the transfer would be looked into again. He said a few days later the bank concluded his parents had been scammed and the money would be repaid, adding the process was a struggle. Shashikala said, "We never thought we would get the money back. People heard my story and in the end it was a happy ending. We are really happy and really grateful to all the people who helped us." A Santander spokesperson said after reviewing Mr. and Mrs. Jansari's case, "We have reimbursed the £2,500 that was stolen by the scammers." The bank urged customers to stay alert when booking a trip. A spokesperson said in the first 3 months of the year it had seen more than over £74,000 in travel-related scams, with fraudsters using fake tickets, cloned websites, and too-good-to-be-true deals to target consumers. If something doesn't feel right, trust your instincts and take a moment to double-check before making a payment, they said. The Jansaris did manage to travel to Ahmedabad after booking a later trip through a travel agent in Leicester. The couple hope their experience will act as a warning to others to be aware that scammers are everywhere. Shashikala said scammers are very clever. They use old people like us. She said she has continued to attend sessions run by Healthy Living at Rushy Mead Recreation Centre, which provides fraud advice. "I shared my story with the group. I wanted to help people," she said. "We have learned a few more things to look out for, and it has given me a little bit more confidence." A spokesman for Expedia said all legitimate transactions with Expedia should take place through our official website or mobile app. Travellers should never receive messages like this. The instruction to switch to WhatsApp from our team. The travel company added anyone with concerns about payments should contact their bank. The Financial Ombudsman Service has also been contacted for comment. So this is a case of a couple who were fraudulently taken money from when actually, they made a mistake on their end. They shouldn't have actually gone onto WhatsApp, and they shouldn't have definitely not paid that money because they're actually lucky that they got their money back. In some cases, banks will determine that it's actually your own fault for sending that money in the first place, so it's ill-advised to do so. Always be careful with your money. That's kind of the lesson to be mindful of. Harry Baker's star Cy King has opened up about his love of food, family life, meeting his best friend Dave Myers, and coping with grief. The 59-year-old TV presenter and cook appeared on the latest episode of BBC Radio 4's Desert Island Discs with Lauren Laverne, and spoke about how cooking with his mother got him through his grief after losing his dad at the age of 8. Born in Kibblesworth, Gateshead, King found fame as one half of the TV duo appearing with Myers on the BBC cookery series for many years. King recalled grieving at the stovetop and said cooking was the way of Mam showing her love and care. The Harry Bikers' first TV appearance together was in the Harry Bikers Cookbook in 2004, which is part cooking show and part travel programme. Myers from Barrow-in-Furness in Cumbria died in 2024 at the age of 66 from cancer. King told Laverne when he delivered the eulogy at Dave's funeral, He had worked out they had ridden 650,000 miles, or 1,046,073 kilometres on motorbikes in the years they had made their TV series together, the equivalent of travelling to the moon and back. Born in Kibblesworth, which used to be in County Durham, Kim was the youngest of 3 children, and his dad served in the Arctic convoys during World War II. He died when King was just 8 years old, after a failed double kidney transplant. King and his mother worked through their grief by cooking together. He said it was instilled in him to cook from the heart because you could taste the love in the food, and not to cook in a bad mood because you'll taste that anger. His love of motorbikes began when his uncle looked after him during his dad's illness. As a teenager, King would pick his mother up after she had done her shopping, and they rode without insurance through the estates back home. They would be vigilantly watching for the resident policeman, who was determined to catch them. After attending school at St. Robert of Newminster School in Washington, he pursued his love of music and was a drummer in a band, but when he became a dad at 23, he decided he needed more regular income. He got his first TV job working as a runner on Byker Grove, where he would give Ant and Dec lifts in his Ford Sierra. King moved on to being a location manager and met Myers, then a makeup artist on the set of Catherine Cookson TV drama in 1992, when they bonded over their love of food and motorbikes. We got each other at that point. That's where it was a lifelong friendship, he said. A few years later, they put together a pilot program which saw them riding around on their bikes in Barrow-in-Furness, where Myers lived, cooking food for people. King spoke about how the success of the show came at a cost, as the hairy bikers were contracted to work 200 days a year filming, often thousands of miles away from home. Speaking about his split from his first wife Jane, he said being away changes you, as he was not involved in the day-to-day life of his family and friends. In 2014, King faced his own health challenge when he suffered a brain aneurysm while separated from his wife and living alone. He said he was on the sofa watching rugby and saw the players falling off the screen, so headed to the hospital, where doctors told him he had a brain aneurysm that started to break. He said he was emotionally all over the shop. He had the operation, but it took 18 months of being very fatigued all the time to recover, sometimes taking him 2.5 hours to make a cup of tea. King also told Laverne how he dealt with his grief over Myers' death and how he never stopped being his best mate just because he died. When he was diagnosed with cancer, King said Myers remained true to his character and was all about the fight and keeping the motorcycle wheels turning. I was there to support my mate in whatever he and his wife Lily decided, he said. King said grief never leaves you, and there's always that sense of loss. In 2024, thousands of motorcyclists took part in a mammoth ride from London to Barrow-in-Furness to celebrate the life of Myers on the first Dave Day. King said it was an amazing expression of fellowship and community, but it was also frustrating that he, Myers, wasn't there to see it, because he would have absolutely loved it. He said the community was unbelievable, as people opened their gardens and spare rooms for people to come and stay in as the hotel prices rocketed. King also spoke about opening his proper restaurant in the sheepfolds in Sunderland and the ethos which guided him. He said if we can't get the ingredients within a 60-mile, 97-kilometre radius, then it's not getting into a pie. Asked what kind of boss he was, he said, I'm a committed socialist and I run my businesses in that way so everybody gets paid more than a living wage, and they're valued for what they do. His luxury item was a solar fridge to store the fish he caught on the desert island and rum. I'd love to know what you guys think actually of this story. It is a bit of a shame. For anyone who's aware of the Hairy Bikers, it was a show with these two people. Basically, they went around different countries. Sometimes they actually went around the UK, which is where they're from, and they try all these different places to try and highlight the businesses, especially the local ones, about what they're doing in terms of sustainability, what their products are offering, and just make it a little bit more accessible for the general public. They also went to some higher end places as well, but they always kept it more so to the local experience than anything else. Put any comments you've got down below in the comment section. Make sure to like the video, it really helps to support the channel. And if you can watch a video either at the end screen or actually on my main channel, then I'm sure that will help you as well as boosting my watch time. Thank you.